Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Find It Fridays, presented by the Auburn Avenue Research Reference and Research Division staff. My name is Tamika Strong, and I will be your presenter today. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and turn off my video so that I can focus on the presentation as opposed to staring at myself. So I just want to thank you for joining us, and hopefully the information being shared will be useful for you. Get the presentation started. And if you could just let me know in chat if you're seeing my slides, that would be great. Excellent. Thank you. So, welcome again. This Friday, Finding Friday's presentation will focus on Ancestry Library Edition. But before we get started with that, we want to give you an overview of the Auburn Avenue Research Library. We are a special library of the Fulton County Library System, formerly the Atlanta Fulton Public Library System. We are the first library in the Southeast of our kind, as our focus is on the culture and history of African Americans, as well as other people of African descent. We have a international collecting policy, so we really cover the full African diaspora. We are 30 years young in our facility. However, we are continuing the legacy that began back in 1921 with the opening of the Auburn branch of the Carnegie Library of Atlanta, which was the first library branch that provided library services to African Americans. The collection that became the basis or the foundation of our collection started in 1934 as a Negro history collection. We are an institution that is divided up into three different divisions. The first division is our program and outreach division. Our reference and research division is our second division, and we're located physically on the second floor. And our archives division is located on the third floor. Each of us provide different levels of service, whereas programming focuses on programming and outreach. Reference and research, we provide support for scholars and researchers who are utilizing the materials in our collection. And the archives division is responsible for maintaining the archival collections that we have here housed at the Auburn Avenue Research Library. So I just want to make you aware that our next Find Friday session will take place on Friday, September 19th at noon. And it will focus on the AARL vertical files. And the vertical files is a collection that has been maintained since the 1970s of newspaper clippings and other ephemera that have been collected on a multitude of topics. And so Marcella James, who is the caretaker of the vertical files, will be the presenter for that presentation. And I also wanted to make sure you're aware that all of our Find It Fridays are being recorded and have been recorded. And so all of the previous sessions are available on our YouTube channel. And so if you go to our website, if you go to the Auburn Avenue Research Library website, scroll to the very, very bottom, you can then click on a link from there, or you can go to youtube.com and just do a search on the Auburn Avenue Research Library, and the image that you see on the screen is what you would see as our header. And if you scroll down a little bit, you will see under Creative Playlists the instructional series Find It Fridays playlist. And so you'll be able to view any of the 6 videos that we have in that collection. So, Ancestry Library Edition. This is a very popular resource. The personal version of it is ancestry.com, but the institutional version of it is called Ancestry Library Edition, and that's what we're going to focus on today. So, first question for the audience. How many of you have used ancestry.com or Ancestry Library Edition before? If you will, please post your responses in the chat. All right, so we have one response so far. Okay, great. So hopefully, after this presentation, you will have the tools in which you would need in order to get started. It's not a difficult resource to use, but there are many layers to it. So I would consider Ancestry Library Edition and any other database related to genealogy as a parfait. There are many layers to it. And so we're going to really just scratch the surface today. But we're also going to leave you with some additional resources that you can explore to learn more about utilizing this resource. So the first steps to research utilizing Ancestry Library Edition really starts at home. And I know that sounds kind of contradictory, but when you're doing genealogy research, which is what the primary use for Ancestry Library Edition is, you really have to start at home. So you want to take the you want to begin by preparing yourself for this research. And so the steps that are included in that is looking in your closet or the closet of your mom or your grandparents or someone else who may be the keeper of your family's documents. Many of us have this proverbial shoebox sitting in our closets, and it is chock full of stuff. Now, some people may look at this and be like, this is a hodgepodge of mess. This is just a whole lot of stuff going on. But as family researchers, we look at this and think, oh my gosh, this is filled with so much information. There are pictures, there are documents, there are other resources in here that can help us learn more about our family members or our ancestors. And so this is truly the starting point. Maybe you don't have a proverbial shoebox. Maybe you have someone you can talk to, or maybe you just have an obituary, or maybe you have one of these documents at home. So this list is just a small segment of the resources that may be available in your home. You may not have representation from all of these, but you may have some of them. And these resources will help you create a foundation that you need to create before you start researching in Ancestry Library Edition. So the preparation for this is very important because once you start doing the research, you need to know that you need as much information about the family unit or the family members that you're researching so that when you see it in the census or you see it in Ancestry, you'll know that that's your person or your family. And sometimes we learn about we gather genealogy information in some of the most unusual places. I have been sitting in traffic at time and I will see a memorial decal. This essentially is genealogy because it provides information about the person. It gives their name, their birth date, as well as their death date. So that may not be a lot of information, but it is a very good starting point. You may also see memorial T-shirts. A lot of this is very popular in the African American community right now as well, where you create memorial T-shirts and you wear these to the memorial services. But just like with the memorial decal, there's information about this individual. It provides her name as well as her birth date as well as death date. So that in and of itself is a clue for genealogy research. Then there's this other unusual one, tattoos. Tattoos have become more popular as of late, but tattoos sometimes provide additional information, genealogical information as well. So this individual, Pearl, was born 1925 and died 2019. So if we had a little bit more information about Pearl, we can actually find out um, about her family and some other information in the census or utilizing Ancestry Library Edition, but it's still a clue. And so sometimes we have to become detectives when we're beginning this research journey because we have to find all this preparatory information so that when we turn to resources like Ancestry Library Edition, we will be well informed and we'll be able to distinguish between other individuals who may share the same first and last name or surname of our research subjects. So, one other way to prepare is to interview relatives. It doesn't have to be formal. It can just relatives and or family friends because sometimes the family friends may know just as much as the relatives do. But it doesn't have to be very formal. You can just strike up a conversation when you're in the presence of that person. And if they are agreeable to it, try to record it. We walk around with many computers in our pockets every day, our cell phones. So you can utilize that to make a recording because we are now in an age where everybody wants to record everything. And so just utilize that process to capture some information about the family history. When you're talking to that person could also have documents that could be useful for your research. And so you may want to check with them and ask them for copies of any pictures, funeral programs, obituaries, and things like that that may be useful for your research. But you also have to be prepared. They may be unwilling to share information or materials, and that's just because of a number of reasons. But the goal with this is to be patient and try to, if you get a no from them, maybe work with somebody else to see if they'll be more willing to share. So, what do you want to record? You want to write everything down. You want to write it down. You want to write down all the names. And when I say names, I mean the full names, any nicknames for the individuals, as well as name abbreviations. And you want to get that information for the parents, for the siblings, the children, the aunts, the uncles, everyone who may be in the family, immediate family, extended family, as much information as you can gather about them. So you do want the names. You also want the important dates. So birth, marriage, death, divorce. Did they serve in the military? If so, what branch, what years? Also, did they move? If they were living in Georgia, but then in 1950 they moved to Ohio, you want to record that because that's a migration. So you need to know exactly where the people are. And so that goes into the last point, which is you want to record the places where the family lived because you want to know who you're looking for, what time frame you're looking for them in, and also where you're looking for them in. And all of this will make better sense when we start looking at Ancestry Library Edition. So one of the things you want to do in the beginning as a part of your preparation is to determine your goal. All of us are approaching this genealogy journey for a different reason. Maybe want to learn the name of our second great grandmother. Maybe want to learn if we're related to this famous person in our hometown. Whatever the case may be, you really want to figure out what is it you want to learn about your family. Then, with that in mind, establish a goal, multiple goals, actually. I like to establish a long term goal, which will, take me a while to get to, but also a short term goal because I'm a big proponent of instant gratification. And that instant gratification will be a motivating factor to help keep you motivated to work toward that long term goal. Once you have these goals, you want to write them down and post them in your workspace because it's going to be very easy once you start really getting down into these databases to lose sight of your goals. You're going to end up, in some cases, going down a rabbit hole, and you started in the left field, and 2 hours later, you're totally in right field. So you really just want to try to stay focused on the goals as much as possible, but it's okay if you follow what they call a bright, shiny object. If you go down a rabbit hole, just remember to try to work back toward your goals and try to achieve those. So, this is how we truly prepare for research. You really want to find an ancestor who lived before 1940 or 1950. And I say these 2 years because of the resources that we'll be utilizing once we start researching. You also want to determine where that ancestor was living around the time. You want to have a list or knowledge of the family unit, the names. So that goes back to the names, goes back to where they were living and when they were living, and goes back to the goal. So I'm just reiterating the different points that were mentioned previously. So one way I like to work through this process is to actually show real life examples or case studies. And so for this session, we're going to use my maternal grandmother, Ms. Maggie Bell, as our research subject. And so I have looked in that proverbial shoebox and I pulled out her funeral program. And so on the right is her obituary. And so, just a little note about some of the resources that we utilize. You may learn that some of the information in the resource may not be completely accurate. So, you just have to utilize the other clues that's within it to make sure that the person that you're looking for is the person that you're looking for. The person you're looking at, the records you're looking at for the individual actually is for your research subject. So, just a few facts about my grandmother. She was born April 20th, 1928, born in Atlanta, Georgia. Her parents actually were Bessie Prentup and Albert Prentup, which contradicts what's included in her obituary. She was educated in Atlanta public schools. She was married to a Leonard Swinger, and 3 children were born to that union. She was also married to a Henry Maddox, and she bore 6 children to that union. And so that provides some general information as well as a listing of all her children, the names of 2 of her brothers, and some other information. So this is a starting point. And so from that, we can pull out more information. So we have determined that Maggie Bell Prentup Swinger Maddox, and I like to use her whole name just to show that she had 2 name changes in her lifetime. She lived from 1928 to 2000, so I have a time frame. I have her life range. So using that information, I now have an ancestor who was alive or living before 1940, 1950. I have determined where she lived, which she lived in Atlanta, Fulton County, Georgia, with her mom and siblings. She also lived in Fulton County the majority of her life, and she died in Fulton County. She was also born in Atlanta as well. I have a list of the individuals in her family unit, the names of both of her husbands, Leonard Swinger Sr. and Henry Maddox, as well as the name of all 9 of her children that you can see there with their surnames, which attaches them to the proper father. So, with all of that being said, I also have additional information about her mother and father, her stepfather, who is Roy Blake Sr., and he was the stepfather, not the biological father. I know the names of her grandparents, Maggie and Albert Paget. I know the names of her brothers as well as the names of her sisters. So, with all of this information, I now know a little bit more about my grandmother, Maggie Bell. So, I'm armed with enough information to try to track her down in some resources. So, utilizing that information, I want to find my short term goal is I want to find census records for my maternal grandmother. And the long term goal is I want to trace my maternal line to 1870. 1870 is a pivotal year for African Americans because that is the first U.S. federal free population census that African Americans are listed by name. Because previously, before that, it was 1865, and that was the end of slavery. And so that's why 1870 is such a pivotal year for African Americans. So, with all that in mind, and that being said, one of the things I like to utilize when I'm doing this research is I like to create what's called a census checklist. And essentially, it is a foundation for a timeline for an individual. And the census checklist helps me to narrow my search, or to keep in mind what years I'm looking for her in the census, because the census is one of the records that you're going to utilize heavily while doing genealogy research, and it is one of the biggest resources in ancestry. And so, utilizing her life range, 1920 to 2000, I'm able to create a census checklist because the U.S. federal census, came out every 10 years. And so the most recent one that we have available to us to research is 1950. So, with that in mind, I know that I should be able to locate my grandmother in the 1950, 1940, and 1930 census. This is the reason why I mentioned having a research subject who lived in 1940, 1950. The reason why I said 1940, 1950 is because Despite my best efforts, I still have not been able to locate my maternal grandmother in the 1950 census. And so, since that is the case, I go back to 1940, if that makes sense. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to post those in the chat. And if something doesn't make sense, let me know that as well. So now I'm prepared and have done the preparation in order for me to get started with Ancestry Library Edition. And I know that might seem like a lot of work, but it is necessary because you want to make sure that the people you're researching are the actual people that you need to locate in the records. Because believe it or not, even with the most unique spelling or most unique name, there's still other people who share the same name. So a little bit about Ancestry Library Edition. It is available for free at all public libraries in the state of Georgia through Galileo. All you need to do is it is available on site. So you have to go on site to get access to it, but you can bring your own device. So if you have your laptop and you log into the library's wireless network, you'll be able to utilize Ancestry Library Edition. So you can sit at the library for as long as the library is open and utilize it. Some libraries even have their Wi-Fi signal has increased the strength of their Wi-Fi signal so that you can access it from the parking lot. So if you wanted to on a Sunday, even with the library being closed, you may be able to utilize that resource then. May or may not. It depends on the times that the libraries have their wireless network turned on. But that is something to keep in mind about access to this resource. Additionally, Ancestry Library Edition offers a variety of records. They have the census records, they have vital records, which include birth, marriage, death, and divorce records. They also have military records, passenger lists, and just a full plethora of records. They're constantly adding more collections. So if you have done some research previously in Ancestry Library Edition, you may want to try that search again because there may be new resources available for your research subjects. Additionally, with Ancestry Library Edition, it includes records from other countries. So it's not just US based. You have the UK, you have Canada, you have other countries. So it is truly a great starting place. So it's one of many resources that are available, but it is a great starting place. So, how do you find Ancestry Library Edition on the Fulton County Library website? So, the way we're going to do this is I'm just going to walk you through the steps, through the slides first, and then we're actually going to do an online demonstration. So, keeping my fingers crossed that everything stays up and running. So, we'll see. So, the first step is to go to the Fulton County Library System website, which is full code library.org. Once you get there, you're going to click on services in the blue bar. Once you click on services, you're going to click, I'm sorry, that's the part that I didn't click, that I didn't get to. But you'll see from the drop down menu, you'll see digital library, which is this one. So you're going to click on digital library. And once you click that, it's going to bring you to this screen. And once you get there, you're going to click click by subject. And the next screen you should see is this one here. And you're going to click on genealogy. Then you're going to click on Ancestry Library Edition. It is the very first listing in the list of resources. And so I just wanted to point out again that Ancestry Library Edition is only available for in-library use. So you have to be in the library or on their wireless network to be able to utilize this resource. So once you click there, you're going to come up to this screen. Now, I know you just know that there's no real red X there, but I wanted to put that there just so you will be aware that you don't start searching on the right. You start searching on the left. On the right will give you it's Story Scouts. I'll show it to you when we pull it up so you can kind of see the difference. But it's just providing you with just some information about some of your ancestors and some very generic information. But in order to really try to start researching, you have to click the begin searching button that is on the left. So one of the things I like to advise researchers when they're just beginning this journey is to cast your net wide. You really don't know what type of resources are out there. So sometimes less is more, where you don't want to put in too much information to kind of restrict your search. And I'll explain what I mean a little bit more later. But cast your nets wide. You want to really just see what's available out there so that you'll know what type of records are there. And a few research tips before we get started. Do not get discouraged when you see a different spelling or different birth year for your ancestor. Just know that some of the dates and some of the spellings are not accurate, but it does not mean that that isn't your person. That's why you have to use the other information, the other people in the family to help ensure that the person you're looking for is actually your research subject. You want to always look at the original document if it is available. There are some databases in Ancestry that only has the index, but then there are others like the census records that have the image of the original document. And so you definitely don't want to stop at the transcription page. You want to look at the original document. So if you cannot read cursive handwriting, you will have trouble with this research because the original documents are in cursive. You also want to learn about the collection you're using. You want to read the description just to see if it includes the place that your family lived. The thing about some of these databases is that they do not, even though they say Georgia marriage records, you have to really look at the description to ensure that all the counties the county that you're looking for is included in that database or is included in that collection, if you will. So, like if there's a collection of Georgia marriages, but it does not include Fulton County, but you're researching Fulton County, you're not going to receive any results from that because Fulton County is not included in that collection. Hopefully that makes sense. So, with that being said, I wanted to tell you about an upcoming Find It Friday session where we're just really going to focus on census records. We're going to go into the history. We're going to talk about the differences between the different census years, and that's going to take place on Friday, October 17th at noon. And so if you can't make it that day, like all the other Find It Fridays, it will be recorded. So we're going to do online demonstration, and we're going to search by name and location. Then we're going to search by specific collections. We're going to show you how to browse resources in Ancestry as well as explore other resources that are available in Ancestry Library Edition. So I'm going to end this presentation and we're going to hop right over to Fulton County Library. I'm just going to get to the top of the screen. And as I said before, just confirm that you guys are seeing the website in the chat, please. Thank you. So when I click on services, you'll see digital library. And once I click on digital library, I should come up to the digital library screen. And from here, I'm going to click on by subject. Then I'm going to click on genealogy. And then I'm going to click on Ancestry Library Edition. So as I previously mentioned, let me reset it because it's really big for whatever reason. On this side, it's about Story Scout, And I'm just going to demonstrate what you see when you type in a name. So it's really looking at stories. So because I know the full name of my grandmother and I know her life range and I know her spouse's name, her mother's name, her father's name, where she was born and where she died, and I know she lived in East Point, and I thought it was really interesting to see all the show residents. So this is my grandmother. All of this information is familiar. And so that's why that preparation that we went through, even though it was tedious and probably took a long time, it was important because now I can confirm that this person, this Maggie Bell printup that I'm looking at here, is actually my grandparent. All right, so if I click this, now it's going to go through this, and it's really interesting because instead of focusing on the person that you're researching, it took me to my great grandfather. I wasn't really focusing on Albert Printup, but that's where it took me. So it's cute because it provides some interesting information, but this is not going to help me if I'm looking for Maggie Bell Printup. So you feel free to play around with it. But again, like I said, when you're ready to start doing research for, why is it taking me to Ancestry.com? When we're ready to do research, you want to begin researching. So I'm going to click on begin researching. But before I do that, I just wanted to bring you down and show you this. You can actually search in a multitude of ways, Ancestry. You can use the quick links. You can go to specific records. You can search census, vitals, military, or you can just do a general search. So you can click begin searching here, or you can also utilize the links at the very top. So if I click search at the top, if I click on all collections, it's going to bring me to this page here. And so this page is the general searching page for Ancestry Library Edition. And in the center, you'll see a place where you can type in the name of the individual that you're researching. But before I do that, I just want to bring your attention to three other parts of this site. So when you realize, or once you learn the places where your family lived, you can actually go and see, utilizing this map, what records they have for that research location. So if Georgia is one of your research locations, you can go to the map, you can click on Georgia, and you see that it has 148 collections. And once you click on the map, it will give you a listing of all the collections, which is interesting because they only list 58 here, but it was over 100 in the other one. So I'm not sure why there's a discrepancy. But this provides you with the listing of the different collections, and you can organize it by the type of collection. So you can restrict it to birth, marriage, and death if you choose to, or you can just do the different collections, which brings you back to 58. And so if I click X, because you can, scroll through and get an idea about what records are there. You can also do explore by collection. So just like with the different types of collections, they have those different facets over here as well. So if you just wanted to search the census, you can actually click on U.S. Federal Census Collection. And I like to open tabs so I can keep my my starting place. So I can go back to it, but I can go to the other pages that I wanted to open. So this is the U.S. Federal Census Collection. So this shows you all of the census collections that they have from the U.S. Federal Census. So from 1790 all the way up to 1950, they have them. The only census that we don't currently have is the 1890 because it was damaged in a fire and they couldn't salvage it, so they had to destroy it. But there were small, very small fragments, but we really don't think about that because it was so small that it's not even useful for most people. But there are other resources available from the census, like they have the mortality schedules, they have the population schedules, which includes like the agricultural and some others. And then they also have, which are specific to African American genealogy, the slave schedules as well. So if you just wanted to search the census collection, you can do that as a way of narrowing your search. But like I said, you really just want to, when you're beginning, to cast your nets wide. And so once you get to the point where you really know a collection that you want to utilize, you can click on view all and type in, say, for instance, if you're interested in a tax digest collection, you can type in tax digest and it will pull up the property tax digest collection that they have here available on Ancestry. But that's pretty advanced stuff. So now that we're starting, we're just going to type in the keywords. And so having done this search before, I know that I need to type in her, I'm just going to add her middle initial and see if that helps. So in looking at this list of the search results, I know that her name is Maggie Bell Prennup Swinger Maddox, but her name was Maddox at her death. So I'm going to be looking for a Maggie B. Maddox, and I think from my search results list, I did find one. And so with the search results, you can actually hover over the link and it'll give you a preview so you can see some additional information about the person. But just based off of what I'm seeing here, this looks like a match because her birthday is April 20th, 1928. She did pass away August 5th, 2000. So I'm going to go ahead and since I love using tabs, I'm going to right click and open up a new tab. So I'm going to hop over to that tab and it's going to provide me with some more information. So this is an index. So this is the Social Security Death Index and it provides me some very basic information. But one of the best features of Ancestry is this part right here, the suggested records. So what I can do now is I can go ahead and start looking at all of these records just to see if all of these individuals are about, or excuse me, all of these records are about my research subject, who is Maggie Maddox. So that's why you have to kind of get to know your research subject before you start doing this research, because otherwise, when you start looking at it, you may or may not know. So the census record being one of the foundational records that you're going to look at, you really want to utilize them going backwards in time. So like with her, I want to try to find the most recent one, which is 1950, but I can't find her. So since I can't find her in 1950, I'm going to try to find her in 1940. Now, initially, when I tried to find this record, I could not find her. For the life of me, I couldn't find her. So I had to utilize another resource called familysearch.org to locate her record to figure out how was she listed. And so she was listed as a Blake. And so with this one being the most recent one, the most recent census record that I have for her, I want to take a look at this page, which is the transcription page. But of course, excuse me, as previously mentioned, I want to do the next step, which is to look at the original. So if I click on this image here, this is going to take me to the actual original record. And so the great thing about Ancestry is that they actually highlight the family that you were looking for. So I'm making it larger so we can all see it. But the person who I was looking for is Maggie. And with the 1940 census, the person who has this little notation next to it, I call it an asterisk, they're the ones who provided the information. And so in this case, her mother, Bessie, provided the information to the enumerator, and the information she provided was not very accurate because Maggie, of course, was never a Blake. But in this census, she's listed as a Blake. But I also know that Bessie is her mother. I know that Roy Blake is her stepfather. And all of the siblings' names that I had collected previously are listed here. So we see Roy, we see Nina, we see Mildred, we see Andrew. So that information helps me to confirm that this is in fact the Maggie that I'm looking for. This is in fact my grandmother. And so that's why it's so important for us to capture that information beforehand. And then even with the transcription, sometimes it's not correct. So it says Beske. But when you look at the actual census, that doesn't look like a BE to me, Beske. That looks like a Blake. So sometimes the transcription of the document is not correct either. That's why you really want to look at the original just to see what was listed originally. So now that I know that that's her in 1940, I could actually look at some of the other records. So I'm gonna look at her in 1930. And so here she's listed as Maggie Bell. So when you see these names listed in brackets, that lets you know that somebody provided an alternate name for the record. And so with Ancestry.com, you can actually do that, but you can't do that in Ancestry Library Edition. And so somebody went in and added an additional name to her. And they actually updated her birth year, but based on the age and the census, that was about 1929 because the census took place probably before her birthday. And so here we see that she's in a household where the relationship to the head is her relationship to the head is granddaughter. And so we know that she has a grandmother named Maggie, but her grandmother's name was Maggie Paget. Is this truly her? After some additional research that I conducted, this is in fact my grandmother because her grandmother married a Calloway after she divorced her first husband. So I know that this is her. And as I said before, with Ancestry, it does highlight the family unit and it gives you a yellow highlight for the person that you're researching. And so in looking at this, I have found her in 1930, I found her in 1940, and like I said, I still haven't found her in 1950. But there are additional records that were available for us to look at. So going to my trusty tabs, this is her Social Security Applications and Claims Index entry, which is extremely helpful because this one actually has all the names, all of her names. She never was a Blake, so I'm not sure why they listed that there, but these were people, alternate names that were added. So people, when they're doing this research, may also be incorrect. So just be mindful of that. And so, like I said before, sometimes the information that is listed is not correct. So I know that this is her father is not Roy Blake, but her mother is Bessie Paget. But this is still my grandmother. And it also shows dates when her name was changed. So this actually helps. Um, it can be useful when you're trying to track the name changes for a woman with that resource. So there are other resources available. This is her obituary. It actually gives you the name of the newspaper and the obituary date. So if I wanted to go track down the obituary, I have some good information that will help me go directly to it. There are city directories that are included. This is her when she was married in 1950. She was still with her first husband and they lived at Adeline Avenue. So that's something that we could probably pursue by going to older maps, looking for more information in the city directory, especially like who are her neighbors, by looking at the street directory. But that's another resource that is it's a lot of it can provide you with a lot of great information. But as I said before, Ancestry is really good about highlighting where people are. And so this is her entry in the city directory from 1950. So this is where she was roughly about 1949 because the city directory would capture the information one year and then the following year would publish it. So when you think city directory, if it's 1950, it's actually showing you information for 1949. So let's see what other records are available. So I'm not sure if this is her, but because it gives information about the publication, this would probably be something definitely to pursue just to see what this article is about and if it's about the person that you're researching. And then lastly, I know that she lived in Cooper Street. So I know that this is her even if the year is not correct. So I did find quite a few records for Maggie B that can help me with learning more about her and also sending me to some other records like they have the city directory. So I know she lived in Fulton County. So I need to look at the city directories, which are an annual resource. So it came out every year. So I can take the time and look at each one for the time frame that she lived in the city of Atlanta, just to track where she lived. And one other note about city directories that's really cool is that if you look closely under the surname Swinger, you can see that there are other people who live in that same house. So are these other people relatives to Leonard? I think they possibly are. And I have confirmed that they are. Like John and Minerva are his parents. And so I've identified the grandparents of her first set of children. And then I think Emma is his sister. So when you're looking at these records, you definitely want to kind of look at them very closely so that you can possibly identify additional relatives. Like in the case of the 1940? No, in the case of the 1930 census, this person right here, living right next door to Maggie Calloway, is actually her brother, Jesse Paget, but they have Patrick listed. So when you're thinking about names in the census and other resources, think about early accents. Think about spelling. Spelling was not standardized at that time, so they may have said Paget, but the person may only have known how to spell Patrick. And so that's why knowing the other names of the individuals in the family can help you make sure that, okay, this is actually Jesse Paget, whose wife is Rosa, and his son is Jesse Jr. And he and Andrew Jackson are the siblings of Maggie Calloway, who was at once Maggie Paget. Actually, I'm sorry, Jesse is her son. I just was reminded of that. So, yeah, got to get my people together. But yeah, Jesse is actually her son. So, Jesse is actually Bessie's brother and the son of Maggie. And Maggie is the namesake of my grandmother. So hopefully, that's as clear as mud. I'm sorry. And there is a statement. That's right. The census, the primary purpose of the United States Census is to gather information so that they can appoint representatives to our government. However, there are many uses of these records. And so one use of the record is to locate your family in the census so that you can do family history research. So the census, even though it was created for a completely different purpose, it is being heavily utilized by family researchers to capture information about their family, because this resource actually shows us where they were, when they were there, and who was living in a household with them. So it is one of the best resources to place people in time um, and a location at a certain point. So thank you for that. So I'm going to take 5 more minutes to discuss a few other pieces of Ancestry. So at the top are some navigation links. And so what they have done is they've pulled out information about new collections. So you'll see this notation on the side that says new. So this is something that they recently added. And so they're constantly updating and upgrading and adding to these collections. So it's always important for you to do multiple searches in different points in time, because they may have added a resource that wasn't there 5 months ago, but now that it's there, it may provide additional information about your family. They have a link for charts and forms that you can utilize to help you organize your research. They even have the forms for each census year. So if you were curious as to what an original form looked like, they have it not only for the US Census, but also the UK and Canadian censuses. There's also the Learning Center, which is very helpful because they have research aids. And so they have one about the census, they have the Beyond the Basics, They have some specifically on military, immigration, as well as ethnic ancestors. So if you're doing African American research, this is also a very good resource for you to consult. But they also have some other information about how to teach you how to get started. And they even have one on timelines. And I'm a big proponent of timelines because once you put it on the timeline, it kind of helps you to see some information better, and you can actually see what information may be missing. So they do have message boards. I'm not sure how this really works with Ancestry Library Edition because I haven't really utilized it, but maybe it is just there for a resource. So I'm not sure if you can post, but you can definitely go and review information from the message boards. And then, of course, there's the different ways that you can search, including the card catalog, which if you change the date added, it will still show you the new collections. Or you can sort by collection title. So they have over 11,000 collections. So the best way to really utilize this is to type in some keywords. You can type in Georgia, and this will show you all the records or all the collections that include Georgia in them. And even though it says like Aiken County, South Carolina, there may be some mention of people who may have died in Georgia and it's buried in Aiken County. But then you can also find the ones that just have Georgia in the title. And once you do that, it'll pull up approximately 81 collections that you can explore. And so if we go to Georgia marriages, and so I know I mentioned the description about the collections. And so whenever you click on a specific collection, it will take you to a page, and then it has an about section. So remember how I talked about making sure that your county is represented? This also includes the date range. So if you're researching in Appling County, Georgia, you're not going to pull any resources from this collection because it's not one of the counties listed. I mentioned Fulton County. Fulton County is listed. However, the date frame for this is 1829 to 1865. So if I was looking for the marriage record between my ancestors in Fulton County in the in the early 1900s, they're not going to be listed because this section or this the information for Fulton County only goes to 1865. So there's a chance that some of the collections that you're researching may not have the information about the research subject that you're doing research for, because the time frame may not cover the time frame that they were living in that particular location. So that's just something to keep in mind when you're doing this research so you don't get discouraged, because it's very easy to get discouraged when you see that your person is not showing up, but your person may not be showing up in the collection simply because the time frame of the coverage of the collection does not match the time frame that your ancestor was living in the area, if that makes sense. So we have 5 minutes left. So I wanted to see if anyone had any questions or needed me to go over anything that may not have been clear. So the video, it takes us roughly about a week to get it posted to our YouTube channel. And so if you go to our homepage, it's easier just to search our name. But if you go to the Fulton County Library System website, click on hours and locations, you can click on Auburn Avenue. And once you click on that, it's going to bring you to our homepage. Then if you scroll to the very bottom, sorry for all the scrolling, you can click on the link there. Or you can go to youtube.com and you can do a search for Auburn Avenue Research Library. And it'll bring you to us. You know, it's us with the little orange logo. And then it'll bring you to the same place. And then you'll just go down to the Finding Fridays playlist. And then once you click on the playlist, it will show you the listing of all of the recordings that we have there, because last month was Fold 3. And so the month before that was the AARL additional resources. So it's right there. So I can actually put this link in the chat so that you guys will have it. So as I said before, we're going to have another session where we're going to be talking about census records, and that's going to take place in October. If you go to our website, just trying to figure out the easiest way to find it, and you go to more events, and you do online events. And so that shows our Finding Friday from today. It shows the other ones as well, which is interesting because it's not really showing them the way I thought it would. But the information is there. So you can register there to get more information. So I just want to say thank you to everyone for joining us today. And so if you have any additional questions, you can always reach out to the research division at this website, at this email, to ask us any additional questions that you may have. So I'm glad that that was useful, Ms. Malcolm. And if you have some additional questions, like I have some fillable forms that might be helpful from a resource that I love called Midwest Genealogy Center. They have family history forms. I also have some of the older versions that have father and mother, but they're newer versions. They have parent 1 and parent 2, because we know that our family units are not traditional, and so they wanted it to be more inclusive. But I actually have the older version that includes mother and father. So if that's something that interests you, just shoot me an email at the email address that I listed there, and I'll be able to send you copies of those. So thank you guys very much for spending part of your Friday with me, and I hope you guys have a great rest of the weekend. I do not, but if you have some feedback that you would like to share, you feel free to send that information to the AARL reference email as well. And we welcome it. If there's any topics or resources that you want us to cover, just shoot us an email telling us that as well. Because we're definitely looking for ideas for 2026, that Find a Friday series, because we do hope to continue this on. So we welcome any feedback. Thank you. You guys have a great day.